Hey guys, I'm so happy to have you for this episode of the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. This is our mini pod series on Wednesdays where we're covering everything about each type that we can in a mini pod format. For today, Enneagram 8s. Last week was 9, next will be 7. And we're even covering 8s with every type in relationship briefly as well. So, in addition to this primer, I recommend highly that you get my book, The Enneagram and Marriage Your Guide to Thriving Together in Your Unique Pairing, where I go through a deep dive on every single type pairing and all the ways that they shine together, the ways they walk through the shadows and come out through the other side. And this comes from years of experience and research. So I love to share it with you. And thank you for being part of all the research in this. It's been over 400 episodes since I've done an episode where I walk type by type. There are 45 pairings. We are pacing ourselves. We are only doing the eights today. Stay tuned for the rest of the series. I love when you're expansive and you are listening for friends, for coworkers, for people in your dating life, for people if you're married, your partner. I love for you to explore yourself if you're the eight. So thank you for pressing play, being brave. We have so much more for you at enneagramandmarriage.com. But here and now, let's walk together through the beautiful lens of the Enneagram 8. So first of all, I want to let you know that eights are the protectors of our people. They are those who see the downtrodden and the hurt, and they want to make sure that they can help them. They have huge hearts and very squishy marshmallow soft centers. And interestingly, on the outside, they also have this, I would say, this exterior of steel. And you know what I'm thinking of, which this is going to date this podcast, but the Tesla truck. I sat in one this weekend. Of course, it's Memorial Day weekend, and my husband wants to go to the Tesla store. That's how he is. And my son. And it was really fun, but also interesting to sit inside of the Tesla truck because I don't think that they've perfected finding the warm, squishy center of it yet. Like maybe you guys would disagree, but I'm like, no, this is not an eight. But the outside has this tough exterior and sharp and even jagged at points. And I'm like, hold on. But when the eight is healthy, this is not the way they are. When they're healthy, their edges are rounded out, there's softness, there's the ability to listen passionately to others and care deeply, as I said, but even those who they disagree with on some things. Because, of course, eights are going to do this with people they agree with and affirm what they like. They're justice types like nines and ones, and they care deeply about what they believe is right and wrong. But when eights are even more healthy, they're able to sit with others, take a deep breath, have a nice pause before they expend all their energy to disagree with somebody. And they just allow themselves to see that everybody has a story and a lens and a view, even if they disagree, or even if knowing many eights might say, oh my gosh, but I can't respect it. But I can try to understand that they don't share my opinion. And sometimes there really is a right and wrong. And so I want to both have you understand that about your eight, that they are made for justice. And that is one of their best features. They work very hard for accuracy. But I also want you, if you're the eight, to also understand that there are a lot of people who have a different neurobiology than you and simply a different story and understanding and cultural layer. So I want you to take that as part of your growth from this episode as well, even as you celebrate all the beautiful things that make you this protector and defender and challenger. Because I want your people to be vulnerable with you. And I know you want that too. I think that something that if you're not close with an eight, you might not know is that eights deeply long for people who can handle their big passion. And I know if you're out there and you're an eight, you're like, yes, because it's so true. And that's why I love my eights so much because I feel like that is something I share with them. But I also understand that many times it feels heart wrenching. It's anguish filled when somebody cannot show up for you in that way. When somebody's like, I don't have the strength, I'm not willing to put myself out there, and you've done that, it can feel like, oh my gosh, I just want to grab everything back that I just spilled and just forget it. And there's this sense of withdrawing that the eight does in their five space at that point. And also the sense of never again will I be vulnerable. And we've seen it in superhero themes, we've seen it in real life probably too. But again, what we have to do when we hit those moments is we have to take a deep breath, a clarifying breath if it's in the moment, and also perhaps do something to healthily extend your anger out into the world too. It might be that you get two workouts that day. It might be that you take a time of solitude and prayer and really receive and meditate on God's goodness and justice, even when you did not feel it for yourself. It may be more likely that there's a combination of several things you need to do. Often we have to speak five positives to one negative. So I very much get it if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, that's not enough. So keep trying to understand you have the power you need to activate yourself to work through this injustice that you feel so that you don't end up isolated and away from people, which statistically speaking and in reality really is not healthy. So we're learning that this is now as bad for us as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day to be isolated, and also that people who are less trusting also have a less happy life in general. So it's important that you understand that when people are looking together to see how big is this project going to be, how daunting, when we're able to manage it with support and with sociability, we're able to get through projects a lot better. Many hands make light work, or we could go into deep dives on research about it, but we have other podcasts for that. Today, I just want to help you to understand this meta framework of reaching back out after hurt. That is my biggest quest for all eights. And how can you do that aside from expending some of this, as I said, emotional angst? The other way to do it is to build the trust back very little bit at a time with patience. And that means actually addressing it and actually letting yourself be hurt. And I want to say that when I put my eight wing on, I can do this. This is the good news about eights. I want to encourage you about something about yourself you may not know. When you actually are built and wired to be a justice type, this is very doable because you're very comfortable with your anger as an eight. So that means you can also share your boundaries as needed with comfortability and a sense of righteousness. And also, as I said, hold with that your partner or your friend or your family member has a positioning that deserves you to, I'm going to use the word respect. Now, even if you can't use that word, as I said, you might come up with one that you can use where you might say, all right, I value authenticity. I'm somebody who really cares about that. And I don't want them to just give me lip service. I do want to know what's going on for them. And I do want to respect it, even if I currently don't. So that's a good want for you, a good goal. But like I said, take it as a strength of yours that you are willing to be honest and forthright, but then also let them do the same. And sometimes because you're bold, and you can almost think about it like, I used Tesla truck earlier, but I'll say if since I know a lot of eights are big animal lovers, like, and I don't mean big animals, but they might be, but animal lovers, but or people who care for the downtrodden. Think about if some big animal came to you and jumped on you, you might say to yourself, oh my gosh, that was a lot. And if you were a fearful person, which I know you're not typically a fearful person, but if you were, you might say, oh my gosh, that was a lot. That overwhelmed me. And eights, when you get older, you understand the experience of overwhelm and you can have more compassion. All of us have more compassion typically after 40. But either way, you've probably had a couple times in your life where you were like, I hit overwhelm. I had done too much. I hit burnout. That's what some people hit a lot sooner than you. So coming at them and not slowing down or being able to take that breath or pausing, letting them share their perspective will harm you. And just like that bounding dog or big daunting truck, people are going to stay away and say, that isn't for me. I don't see the softness. So I want you to be bold to show them your softness, not everybody, just your people in your life who you need to relate with. Now, one last tip for how to do that is to set the boundaries. So I've already shared that you're going to be as honest as you can, that I know you're comfortable with your anger, and that you're going to show a little bit of trust rebuilding step by step, and you're going to allow yourself to cope with whatever styles you need to expend that bodily energy. But I'm adding it now. I hope what is the final recipe piece. And that is, like I said, really setting the boundaries you need to feel comfortable after you're taking this little moment to rebuild trust back. So it might be that you say, okay, my spouse really irritated me. I said I was not going to let this happen again, but I am going to speak my mind one more time, process my pain one more time, and I'm just going to let them know this is the way they hurt me and I don't want to see this again. And I may have to realize that for them to build, pay attention to me when I say this, a new track in their brain that has a new behavior and a new way of being, it may take some time. And if they're not feeling comfortable to be honest with me, also, say this to yourself, then I need to make it a safer space so we can get through the issue to the other side, back to the fun, back to the joy, back to the beautiful energy we had once created together. So, those are extremely important motions that you do. And I know that you will find your own way to them and through them because I believe in you, eight. I know you have a lot of potential and that you are a critical thinker. Even if somebody else says, oh, you're just a body type, you only think of right, wrong, justice. No, you pull back into that five space and you think well. You also have access to the two space. Eight is a type that has access to, which I love this about eight, the super ego, as well as the id, playfulness, and the adult, the five part of them. So you are tracking and rolling with the parent, the adult, and also the kid. You can do this. I believe in you, and I want you to build trust back little by little with your boundaries, with your self soothing, and with little bits and pieces of the conversations that need to be had step by step. You can do this. And if you find out somebody cannot do this with you, then allow them to be somebody else's duty. Allow yourself to say, this is not my person to change, to shift, to glow with. And that's okay too, because we have certain relationship friendships with us for a little while, and others are lifers, and appreciate what each gives to you. So, lastly, before we talk about the eights as a cohort with each type, I do want to mention something very important because of your passion and energy is watch how much you're expecting each person in your life to give you. If you expect loyalty, I get that. But if you expect supreme loyalty from everybody who knows you, make sure you're A, being a good friend to the way they like in their personality type, not just the way you see it, but they're in their personality type. And then also make sure that you are aware that they have relationship to you, but also to many other people. So you may be saying, I want my spouse to give me more, but you're forgetting that they have, I'm just going to name a few things that are pretty typical, but not always the same exact. So you'll have to fill in with your own people, but they have these children that they perhaps have that they need to tend a lot of their energy to. They may have a boss that they're working really hard to please. They may have a parent that's aging. They may have a coach that they're working with on being better at work or at fitness. They may have people in their community, neighbors, house that they're trying to keep up with, chores that never seem to end, and all of this in addition to loving you well. So you have to have other outlets that are healthy people that you're not going to become attracted to. And that's very important for eights because of your big energy, your boldness, the way you live life out loud, to also have safety in your own boundary setting so that you don't have to waste precious, beautiful time together with your family, struggling unnecessarily in the dregs of despair because you've opened doors that just need to be closed right away. And if you have, you can still do this work. But I want you to know if I'm catching you before you've made dire mistakes, then please continue to do your work with me so that you can actually make headway by just allowing yourself to be with people who you don't find attractive so you're not tempted on top of everything else. And why would I bring that up? Because this is the number one issue for marriage, and it can hit anybody of any personality type. In fact, I have seen it hit every personality type. So I like to make sure you guys are versatile enough to say, what am I doing to keep my marriage strong? What am I doing to be upfront? What am I doing to be direct? Yes, because you're an eight. But also, what are you doing to make sure that you are holding safety? What are you doing to make sure you're showing love? You are going to be so bright and beautiful and bold, yes, and such a great friend once you've learned to round out and put your energy in several different great safe places. And also, as we said, expect your spouse to do the same if you're married or if you're hoping to be partnered one day. Then make sure you are also learning about them and just how they tick. And when they tell you, this is my love language, do it. And I know as an eight, you will be good at that. So good job on paying attention to this. Now we're going to walk you through all of the types in just a moment. Okay, here we are at the moment. We are walking eight through every single type with each other. And I am so glad to start with, I'm just going to go one through nine here, but eight and one. Eight and one is such a dynamic force. Oh my goodness. Eight and one are both body types, and they're really given permission in each other to share what their frustration is. The one isn't used to that with most people. Most people don't let ones do that. And so the eight is such a comfort to the one when they actually say, yeah, tell me what's ticking you off. However, the eight will often think the one is feeling ticked off about things that don't matter because they're both justice types, just as the one will feel the eight is ticked off about things that don't matter. So, what this pairing has to come to, and you'll hear me talk about this with eight, nine, it's very similar, the diplomacy of knowing that we're each going to have some things that we feel very differently on. And we just have to learn that that's the way it is, that we each have our own style, and we'll have to feel who is not as big for this issue, who's big for this one, and so on and so forth. Because some of them you'll both feel very opposite on, but frankly, it will mean more to one of you. And just having the candid conversations to say, how much does this mean to you? And to do, I try not to do too many numbers in marriage because we're never exactly fair. And you have to know this as this pairing. life is up and down and all around, and it's unexpected, and there's trauma and trials that cannot be measured so simplistically. But on these things, you can say, what is this for you? Is it an 8 out of 10? Is it a 10 out of 10? Okay, for me, it's a 6 out of 10. I don't care if you make meal or I make it. Like these kinds of issues. But when it comes to really how to get along, because you're so big with this juxtaposition of gifts, I want you to know that there's a beautiful parallel sometimes, but otherwise there's a real hitting. Make sure you have a lot of regular date nights every single week to discharge the excess anger energy. Do something active, go dancing, do workouts first or after with a walk, whatever it is, something that gets your blood just churning and gets you guys digesting the extra anger and enjoying the senses. Both types love fun and have a bit of a seven. The eight has a seven wing, the one goes to seven. So you need your dates every single week, and you are powerhouse forces out there for the good. Now, two with eight is a very passionate pairing. Two often likes to have the more submissive role, not always, because there's an eight arrow to both. Like two has an eight arrow, eight has a two arrow. But sometimes they really do enjoy almost being that feminine versus masculine. And depending on whatever your gender as well, it could be that you just kind of learn how to work together well. And there's like interlocking puzzle pieces here. So I tend to really see that this pairing does well overall. But where I can see them hit walls is if the two gets overly nurturing to others in the community. Eights are types that need a lot of attention. So eights really need to understand that twos also need a lot of attention, but they give out in a lot of spaces. So do some of your giving together. Try to line up some of that because volunteerism, as we already said, is such a gift to the eight. But also make sure that the two and the eight have some time just for the two of you. A lot of that. The eight will appreciate that too, because they go to five more and they will love and want your attention to be exclusively theirs. So they will hold you to that. And that's the same as you want. I know that. So there's a lot of this pairing needing to introspect to say, what do I want from my partner and giving it out back to them. Now, the 8-3 is like a rocket blasting off. There's a lot of confronting, a lot of direct, can be sarcastic conversations. There's a lot of big energy and huge projects going on as they really both have a paramount desire to succeed. And so they can lift each other up and help and understand that in a unique way and support each other in a unique way in that way. And then they can also sometimes trample each other's dreams a little bit by saying, I want to have the center stage. I want to make sure that I'm doing good things for this family. I want to be recognized. So make sure you spend a lot of time recognizing each other and supporting each other. And one way Wes and I do this, because we have a lot of big energy too, is we will take turns supporting each other's dreams. We don't always have to work together on the same dream. And that's a really cool part of our pairing, whereas somebody else we know may love to do something. I'll talk about the 4-8 with that even more together directly. But it's okay if you feel like your energy is big and you're better at supporting each other separately. And just make sure you take time for that if that is you, and talk about their dreams really supportively and just be a cheerleader instead of the front seat. So I love it. I love your pairing, and I know you'll do that. Now, if you're the 4-8, this is the pairing that I was sharing. They can often, with the feminine masculine energy of the pairing, really work well together in tandem, like puzzle pieces again. And there's a lot of heart connections. They both have a relationship to two. They both have a relationship to compassion, to helping the underdog. And this is a pairing that helps to, the four slows the eight down and does a beautiful job of allowing them to be vulnerable and to see the interior of the heart. The four also has a quality that makes the eight keep coming back because they're playful with them. And fours kind of dodging, they can't ever really, an eight can never fully figure you out. So there's a bit of a question mark, and that can be really good for an eight to have to do a bit of a sleuthing. But it can also be extremely frustrating because they really do like things to be neat and orderly and want to know how to work practically. So I think that it can help to create romance, but also we have to have some practicality here because eights are very relational. And I know fours deeply need that too, even if they run from it a bit. So make sure that you come clean for about what's really going on underneath when your eight is seeking some clarity, and let them help you to get that. Eights are very good at bringing clarity to people. And then also make sure that if you are the eight, to understand your four can take on a criticism so fully and deeply that it's very painful, even for me to think about that for them, on how much they could be hurt if you're not careful and if you don't come back later and say, I'm so sorry for the way I hurt you. I was intense and I did not mean everything I said if you said words that you didn't mean. And if you can come around that and understand that that's not healthy for your four, they have to do their own work and not be codependent on you for their worth. But it does matter. They are relational types. So please come back and do your work. That's something that we've really learned to do in our marriage is when we've said too much to come back and do that. You're not alone if you've ever been there. Now, 8, 5, this is a pairing that will understand your logic and your clarifying and appreciate your clarifying 8. Your 5 loves that and they want more of that. In fact, where you will more spar is that the 5 will want to pare down a bit more and not be quite as resourced out. They are givers, though. That's the good news. You're both givers. And so this is why you do see a lot of 5, 8 pairings, but they will want to give in a way that's a bit more statistically significant. In that way, I mean, where it's actually helpful, where it matters in a good way, and you're going to keep being able to give because you're pacing and you're rationing out and you're making sure to count what you're spending so that you guys can come back and regroup. And often 8s have that too, as I said. Some 8s are great clarifiers, even on a budget, but I'm talking really here about an energy budget where a 5 can help you to come in a little bit, introvert a bit more, rest, and then head back out into the world. So I think that's going to be a beautiful fit. And of course, I want you to know, like any pairing, as I said, there's a lot more going on under the surface. And you can get my book if you want to get into the nitty gritty of some even more of the issues of the pairing. Now, with the 8, 6, this is a pairing that both highly values loyalty. Both of them reactive, both of them passionate. There's a lot of sparks flying here. And yet, sometimes there's a passion that when either feels really deeply hurt, there's a wound and a thread of it running so deep and a distrust layer that is so big that it's hard to get them moving back together in tandem, especially if the 6 is not more of the phobic 6, but more of that counter phobic 6 that says, I don't trust and I'm really going to move away and react outwardly. Whereas the phobic 6 is looking for security from the 8 and says like, "Hey, what can we do to repair? I'll do anything to repair." But I do want you to know, 8s, if you're ever in a situation with a 6 and you just can see how loving and caring and, guy or girl next door feel to them, willing to do anything, understand that when 6s have been crossed, they're a lot like you. So please don't cross them. And 6s also, if you don't trust your 8, because I know you struggle with trust, you've got to talk about it with your 8. You've got to set your boundaries. Don't just lean on them and expect them to uh, really respect your cultural compliance. I want you to come out. Yes, be culturally compliant. That's who you are, but also come out and share and be assertive with your 8. They will respect that all the more. Okay, now the 8, 7, fastest moving pairing out there, literally. This is a hard pairing to slow down and get to do their emotional work. There's so much sensitivity to this pairing. And I'm sharing actually my dad and I, that my late dad was an 8. And our relationship was like that, where sometimes as a 7, I would dance around him in that fear space and just be like, okay, like whatever to placate you, but really I'm going to do my own thing because they're both independent, assertive types. So when you really get down to the wire of it, you've got to address that you're different. You've got to talk about that. Those are some things we did before my dad ended his time here on earth, and we got to really have it out. But I love for my 8, 7 couples that I love and know to, yes, understand the oxygen they provide for each other. And we were sparring through books in beautiful ways and all kinds of learning and growing together. But the same is true for you. You have these beautiful oxygenated spaces, but also these places that are dark and desolate and never get any attention. And so this pairing has a huge red flag over it for you to say, we need to do our work, painful and vulnerable as it is, whatever it takes. And a good one for this pairing is just the weekly therapy. That is very important. Yes, individually, which my dad and I did about each other, but also together. If you can be brave to do that, our dad was not in that space. He was like, I'm not doing that. I told my counselor all about you guys and he doesn't like you and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like as a family systems person, I'm like, okay, and then later he's like, oh man, I'm so sorry for the way I treated you. I was just trying to protect you. So it was good to get that. But what I want for you, if you're in that pairing, is to do that work sooner, to be able to have that time together now to be brave. And that's going to require, like I said, some safe spaces. And even if it's like we have our restaurant date every week, we do our hard conversations and then we celebrate and we have our glow up. Marriage is very different from other aspects of family. And yeah, make sure that you take the time though, because you're really a beautifully fast moving couple who I don't want to miss one thing. Now, the 8, 8, oh my gosh, you might think this is even more high energy than the 8, 7. And in some ways it is because of the great clarifying they can do together, the great mountains they can boldly climb like 2 oak trees together. But I also, oak trees don't climb, but you get my point, like very strong people climbing the mountain together. But They also rest well together, and that's something you might not expect, but because they both have a 5, it's just common sense to them. They're like, "We each need time in our lair. We need to go rest. We need to go just be at peace and find our little den." And then we also know how to get up and go. But like I said to the 8-3, try to cheer for each other because sometimes you're gonna have opposite jobs or opposite projects, and you might not wanna do all of that together. Frankly, that's intense to be around each other all day. Marriage can have its ups and downs. And even as 2 8s, sometimes you're going to have justice points at different spaces because maybe one's an 8 wing 9, one's an 8 wing 7, or different overlays, different genders, like so many different cultural considerations to make. So make sure that you allow yourselves to just support and not tell what to do. And also to build the trust back. Make sure you go back to the beginning of this episode. With 2 8s, there's a greater likelihood for vengeance. Now, as for the 8 9, I really like how, as I said with the 8 1, and I talked about this on the last week episode when I did nines, you can listen to it there. I want to make sure you know that I do appreciate the diplomacy of this pairing because you both care very much about what's fair. And I hope you're starting to get the sensation that you both need to do the work around what is important to you. And even if you have to rank it a little bit to say, this is more important for me, this one's more important for you, or if it's important to both of us, we're going to do our best to negotiate diplomatically to say what is the most important thing that we remember together about this moment and what each of us desire and dream for. And it's okay to also have a conversation about what's the dream behind the conflict or within the conflict with your 9 so that you know, oh my gosh, you were never heard. So this is important to you, or you were taken advantage of. So this is more important to you. But do understand, and I cannot say it enough. Diplomacy is so important to this pairing because the 9 won't tell you sometimes when it bothered them. They're merging so hard, they don't even know. So I'm getting passionate about that, but it's very true. And I just had a session with a 9 like that today. So please make sure that you are safe for your 9 to talk to. And like I said earlier today, the bounding up, the overwhelming, large, loud presence without considering your partner and who they are and how they merge, whatever their type, we just have to do better than that now. And we can't always do better. So, as we close out this episode, let me just say it this way: you still get grace. You are not going to do it perfectly. You are not always going to have the best self soothing, the best boundaries, the best ability to build trust back. You're not always going to remember all the tips for your type or be able to do them. I am an idealist, but I have learned across my Enneagram work and across my 28 years of being with Wes that I also have to be practical. That sometimes we just have to say, it was hard today. We didn't do conflict perfectly. Like the late Sue Johnson said, we just had a better repair later. So I believe in you 8s for good repairs, for helping your partner to see how much you love them, for coming alongside your family and being with them, not just over them. And I just love that for you. And I know you're going to have so much softness and light and joy and depth as you step into this. Make sure you come back to my book, The Enneagram and Marriage, Your Guide to Thriving Together in Your Unique Pairing, to do even more work on a deep dive level with me. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.